Jai Swaminarayan. Let's read Loyā 18 of the Vachanāmrut. This passage is titled Conviction of God. Let's dive right into it. On the night of Posh Sudhi the 1st, Samvat 1877, or the 5th of January 1821, Swami Sri Sahajanandji Maharaj was sitting on a large decorated cot in Surak Hachar's Darbar in Loyā. He was wearing a white case and a warm red dagli. In addition to this, he had covered himself with a thick cotton cloth and a blanket. He had tied a white feto around his head and had tied a bokani with another white feto. At that time, an assembly of Paramahansas as well as an assembly of devotees from various places had gathered before him. Then, after the Paramahansas finished the evening arati and prayers, Sriji Maharaj said, "Please sing a devotional song." Thereupon Muktanand Swami and some other Paramahansas sang devotional songs while playing musical instruments. Sriji Maharaj then said, "Now please conclude the singing as I wish to talk. If any doubts arise in what I say, please ask." So saying, he began, "To develop the conviction of God is more difficult than anything else. Moreover, because this topic of conviction is extremely complex, I am afraid of discussing it. I feel, upon discussing this topic, what if someone were to misunderstand it? What if, due to this discussion, any inclination that one may have firmly cultivated were to be destroyed or even uprooted? Yet, there is no alternative but to reveal this fact. If one does not interpret it correctly, many problems can arise. Yet until one has understood this fact, much deficiency will remain in one's understanding. That is why I wish to deliver this discourse. When God assumed the form of Varaha, his form as a boar was very ugly. Assuming the avatar of Matsya, his form was exactly like that of a fish. In Katsha avatar, his form was exactly like that of other tortoises. In the Nursing avatar, his form was as frightening as a lion. In the Vaman avatar, his form as a dwarf had short hands and legs, a broad waist and a plump body. In the Vyas avatar, he appeared black with lots of body hair and a foul body odor. Now, all those who attained God in whichever form he had assumed meditated on that particular form. Then, as a result of that meditation, they attained a form similar to that of God. Now, did those who attained Varaha see God exactly like a boar in his abode? Or did those who attained Matsyaji see God exactly like a fish in his abode? Did those who attained Kurma see God exactly like a tortoise in his abode? Did those who attained Nursing see God exactly like a lion in his abode? Did those who attained Hayagriv see God exactly like a horse in his abode? Did those who worshipped Varaha as if he were their husband become a female boar? Did those who worship him with the love of a friend become a boar? Did those who worship Matsya as if they were their husband become a female fish? Did those who worship him with the love of a friend become a fish? Did those who worshipped Gurma as if he were their husband become a female tortoise? Did those who worshipped him with the love of a friend become a tortoise? Did those who worship Nursing as if they were their husband become a lioness? Did those who worship him with the love of a friend become a lion? Did those who worship Hayagriv as if Were their husband become a female horse? Did those who worship him with the love of a friend become a horse? If the original form of God was exactly like that of Varaha, Matsya, etc., then by meditating on them, the devotees of each avatar, each descension, should attain the same form, and all that I have just mentioned should happen. However, this is not the case. Then you may ask, what is the form of that God like? Well, the answer is that God is characterized by eternal existence, consciousness, and bliss, and possesses a form of pure, divine light. In every single pore of his body, there is light equivalent to millions and millions of suns. Moreover, that God is so handsome that he puts even millions of Kamadevs to shame. Kama means lust. Deva means deity. Kamadev refers to a deity of lust, like Cupid, for example. And, you can expect any deity of desire, of lust, to be very attractive. He is the Lord of countless millions of Brahmans, universes, the King of Kings, the controller of all, the Antharyami of all, the innermost dweller, and extremely blissful. Before his bliss, the pleasure of seeing countless beautiful people pales into insignificance. In fact, before the bliss of the form of that God, the pleasures of the Vishayas, the experiences of the senses of this realm and the higher realms pale into insignificance. Such is the form of God. That form always has 2 arms, but by his wish he may appear to have 4 arms, or sometimes to have 8 arms, or he may even be seen as having 1,000 arms. Furthermore, it is that very God who assumes the forms of Matsya, Katsha, Varaha, etc., and the forms of Ram, Krishna, etc., for the purpose of fulfilling some task. He does not, however, abandon his original form to assume the form of these avatars. That God himself assumes the forms of Matsya, Katsha, etc., possessing countless divine powers and boundless strength. Then, once the task for which he has assumed a body is completed, he abandons that body. Hence, it is said in the Srimad Bhagavat, Bhubharha kshapito yena tam tanum vijahavajaha kandakam kandakeneva dvayam Jabhishitu samam. From the 35th and 34th verse of the 15th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavat. Through whichever physical body God relieved the burden of the earth. After removing the thorn in the form of the belief that one is the body, which had pierced the Chaitanya, the awareness of the beings, God also abandoned his own physical body, which was the thorn used to remove the other thorn. This is a very common metaphor in Vedic contexts, where if one has a thorn, oftentimes they're so small that requires something equally just as small to have the the precision to get the thorn out. It's not something I think I've ever done, really. I think I actually did do that a few weeks ago. I stepped on a thorn and I had used something equally small, but it was a twig or something. Anyway, it said that avidya, ignorance, is like a thorn, and we use the thorn of vidya to get it out. A thorn being sharp, and we throw both thorns away at the end. which is very interesting, especially when it comes to knowledge. That even the knowledge used to clear our ignorance, that becomes released at the end too. And a similar analogy is here with the form of God. Also, God assumed the form of Nursing for the purpose of killing a demon. After completing that task, he decided to abandon that particular body. But who could kill a lion? So, by God's own will, Shiva, in the form of Kal, came assuming the form of a Sharab. A fight ensued between Nursing and the Sharab. As a result, both left their physical bodies. That is how Shiv became to be known as Sharbheshwar Mahadev, and the location where Nursingh Ji left his body became Narsinghi Shila. Moreover, wherever paintings of Matsya, Kurma, and other avatars of God are portrayed, the lower portions of those paintings depict the form of a fish, a tortoise, etc. However, the upper portions of the paintings depict the Murti, the image of God, with a conch, a disc, a mace, a lotus, a Vaijayanti garland, silk garments, a crown, the Shrivatsya mark, as well as other such symbols. Thus the form of God is eternally like this. Initially, at the time of his birth, Sri Krishna Bhagwan gave darshan in a four-armed form to Vasudeva and Devaki. He also gave darshan to Akrur in water in a four-armed form. When Rukmini fainted, he again gave darshan in a four-armed form. Arjun has also said, Enaiva rupena chaturbhujain sahasra baho bhava vishvamurte, from the 46th verse of the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which means, O one whose form is the universe, Krishna, O thousand-armed Krishna, please return to that, i.e. your original four-armed form. So Arjun also saw him as having a four-armed form. When Sri Krishna Bhagwan was seated under a pipal tree after the Yadavs had slaughtered themselves, Udhavji and Maitreya Rishi saw the form of God having four arms, along with a conch, a disc, a mace, a lotus, and silk garments. Moreover, Sri Krishna Bhagwan was dark in complexion, yet his beauty is described as being capable of putting millions of Kamadevs to shame. I don't know if you heard my cat meowing on the other side of my door. Sorry about that. Therefore, although God appears to be like a human, the aforementioned luminosity and bliss are all inherent within him. One who has the inclination of dhyan, meditation, dharana, contemplation, and samadhi, meditative absorption, sees that very form as having the light of millions and millions of suns. Such a person does not need to resort to using a torch or an oil lamp. Moreover, even though God is so, luminous, the fact that this divine light cannot be seen is due to God's wish. If that God willed, may the devotees see me as full of divine light, then that same form would be seen as luminous. So one who has a conviction of God realizes the divine powers, opulence, and attendance of the abodes of Golok, Vaikunt, Shvedvip, and Brahmapur all accompany God. Furthermore, those who serve him are Radhika, Lakshmi, etc. They see God in such a transcendent manner. But those who are fools, i.e. goofballs, see him as a human. Sri Krishna Bhagwan has also mentioned in the Gita, Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanum ashritam bharam bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. From the 11th verse of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which means, fools deride me as having a human form, but they do not realize my transcendental form as the great Lord of all beings. Therefore, those who are fools, i.e. goofballs, fail to realize such transcendence of God and instead perceive human traits in God, seeing Him as a human like themselves. What is meant by perceiving human traits? Well, it is when all of the feelings of the Antakaran, the whole mind, i.e. lust, anger, avarice, infatuation, arrogance, matsar, desires, cravings, etc., and all of the characteristics of the physical body, i.e. bones, skins, feces, urine, etc., as well as birth, childhood, youth, old age, death, etc., and all other human characteristics are perceived in God. A person who perceives such characteristics may appear to have a conviction of God, but their conviction is flawed. As a result, they will surely fall from the satsang fellowship, from the association of true spiritual seekers. That God's form is supremely divine, there is not even the slightest trace of human traits in God. Therefore, one should not perceive human traits in God, and one should instead initially view Him as a deva, as a deity. Then one should view Him as Brahma, the creator, etc. Then one should view Him as Pradhan Purush, then as Prakriti Purush, as nature and consciousness, then as Akshar, and finally as Purushottam, who transcends Akshar. For example, upon seeing the incredible divine actions of Sri Krishna Bhagwan, the Gopas of Vraj initially viewed him as a deva. Then, after listening to the words of Gargacharya, they viewed him as a god. Then they said, "You are God, therefore show us your abode." Thereafter they were shown Akshardham. One who believes God to be divine in this way should be known to have complete conviction. Sometimes people say, initially this person did not have the conviction of God, but they now do. Does that mean that they did not see God initially? Well, they certainly did see God, but they perceived human traits in God. Later, after they developed conviction, they do darshan, the viewing presence, believing God to be completely divine. That is known as having developed the conviction of God. Moreover, if a person does not believe God to be completely divine, then they repeatedly become upset and constantly perceives virtues and flaws, i.e. they think, God is favoring that person but not me, or He often calls that person but not me, or He has more affection for that person and less for me. In this way, they continue perceiving virtues and flaws. As a result, their heart becomes more and more despondent day by day, and ultimately they fall from satsang. Therefore, one should certainly not perceive human traits in God. However, this is my commentary. We certainly can perceive divine traits in humans. Otherwise, where else do we get our traits if not from the source? Further, one should not perceive flaws even in the devotees of God. Why? Because physically a devotee may be blind, disabled, deaf, old, unattractive, or they may have leukodurma, but when they die, do they still remain blind or disabled in the abode of God? Certainly not. Those are all features of humans. After leaving these features behind, they assume a divine form and become Brahmarup, of the form of the divine. Therefore, if one should not perceive flaws in the devotees of God, then how can one possibly perceive them in God? Regardless of whether you realize this fact today or you realize it after 100 years, it must be realized. In fact, there is no alternative but to realize it and imbibe it firmly. Oh, my dear cat is still meowing. Don't worry, I'll let them in just a moment. Therefore, all devotees should remember this principle of mine and discuss it amongst each other. Furthermore, whenever someone suffers a setback due to some misunderstanding, they should be alerted by mentioning this. In fact, one should discuss this principle of mine routinely, at least once a day. This is my command. So please do not forget it. Please, please do not forget it. Saying this, Sriji Maharaj bid Jai Swaminarayan to all of the devotees and returned to his residence smiling. After listening to Sriji Maharaj's discourses, all of the sadhus and devotees realized Sriji Maharaj as the cause of all avatars, the avatari, and greatly consolidated their belief of him as being completely divine. And with that, we conclude the 126th discourse of the Vachanamrut. That is the 18th passage from Loyā, and the last one at that too. The next time we'll begin in a new section, the Panchala section. So thank you for listening. Jai Swaminarayan.